Hello and welcome to another episode of Mothership Gear. We are back with our friend Hanz, and I'm your host, Spencer Alfonso, and I'm the creative director and co-owner of Ildefonso Inc. And I have a couple music projects myself, like Riley and the Roxys and Margos and TBC. And I will be your host today of Mothership Gear. And our guest Hanz is also a singer-songwriter, a guitarist, producer, and we are going to be covering Hanz's Les Paul Recording guitar. And so on Mothership Gear, we like to invite musicians to hang out at the studio and bring over their favorite or most unique pieces of gear. So yeah, Hanz, what kind of music were you drawn to when you first bought this guitar?
I have to, so there's the hamster wheel is always going, so there's that. But when you first asked me that question, I thought, probably anything that would get me the girls.
So what would that be? What was...
It is rock and roll.
Okay.
I mean, I was just being silly. But yeah, rock and roll.
Nice. And give me a couple records you were buying at the age when you bought this guitar.
Okay, well, so I bought this guitar in 1976 on this is weird. I actually remember the date. I don't know why. Maybe it's because this is the first electric guitar I ever bought. So January 16th, 1976, I bought this guitar. That's super weird that I know that date. I admit that. So
what shop did you buy it from?
I bought it off of, I don't even remember how, because there wasn't a recycler. I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There wasn't any of this stuff that you would go, Craigslist the internet had not been born yet. So I think it was probably an ad in the newspaper, and a guy was selling the Les Paul. So I went to his house and bought it. So I went to his house and plugged in the guitar and played it and bought it. And I think I may have mentioned when we did our episode talking about the gold top, I may have mentioned that my first Les Paul I bought wasn't really the model that I wanted. So the model that I wanted was either the gold top or the black fretless Wonder, which was on the cover of Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow record, which is probably in my top five, not probably, it is in my top 5 favorite guitar records of all time.
I believe I have that record. We'll have to do an episode on that record.
Oh, that is it. That record, learning as best as I possibly could, learning to play the solos on that record was basically my primer for becoming an electric guitar player.
So when you bought this guitar, you were thinking about Jeff Beck maybe, and this album Blow by Blow, which came out in 1974?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other...
Well, did that come out in 74?
Yeah. That's what it says here.
Oh, yeah, because I bought this in 76. Yeah, I was already listening to that record. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, that's one of them. Many of the artists that we talked about in our previous episode about the Les Paul, the gold top, Les Pauls were everywhere. It's like drop a pin in the early 70s rock and roll music, and Les Pauls were everywhere. Lynyrd Skynyrd, every one of those bands, the Allman Brothers, to Aerosmith, Foreigner.
So when you bought this, what was your initial impression? You wanted the gold top, you ended up with the recording edition. It was pretty new at the time, right? Because it was probably, 4 years old? It came out in 1972.
Yeah.
What were your initial thoughts? Because it's not a conventional Les Paul.
I think my initial thought was, I have this much money. I want a Les Paul. I'm buying that. And I had zero restraint. It was like, it is a Les Paul. And it has, so some of the things we can talk about today, though, it functions as an instrument, just like as a hunk of wood with a neck on it and all that stuff. It functions pretty much like any other Les Paul. It feels the same, they're very, to my opinion is that there are not a lot of differences necessarily, like they're all either aesthetic or small kinds of things that make Les Pauls from one model to the next different. So it filled that gap for me. And then the fact that it had all the funky electronics, like I literally knew nothing about that stuff when I bought the guitar.
So you just ignored the low impedance, high impedance. You just kind of flipped switches and saw whatever came out of the amp.
I don't even know that I knew what low impedance and high impedance meant when I bought the guitar.
So to you, this was just any other Les Paul with a couple other switches.
Yes.
So what were you running it through when you bought it? Like, what was your rig at the time?
Guitar, cable, blackface deluxe.
Oh, cool.
That was it. No pedal, no nothing. Just turn that deluxe up as loud as you can handle it and then hit the guitar.
And were you satisfied with that sound? How long did you have this as your main guitar?
Probably 4 years.
Okay.
Probably 4 years. Yeah. Yeah, I was satisfied. I mean, I was rough around the edges and stuff, but yeah, I was satisfied.
That's great. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that's kind of the origin of it then. So what do you love about Les Pauls in general? And do those same, for all the reasons that it's famous, do you feel like you get those trademarks of the sound out of this edition, the recording edition?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the yes. I actually might even like playing just as like picking the instrument up. I might actually like playing this guitar more than I like playing my Gold Top, just by a small degree. But it has all the, it's got the same body style. The neck feels almost identical. I mean, there are probably others that would maybe say differently, but so it has all that stuff. I mean, the frets on this are really, they're pretty low, so it feels it's definitely sleek and easy to play rock guitar on, easy to solo on. Now, can you get the same sounds out of this? No. Well, kind of. Because this guitar was originally built, this was Les Paul's idea. This was originally built by him. Well, Gibson built this at his specs because he wanted a guitar that he could plug right into a mixing desk. And then they thought, well, let's put so that would be a low impedance input right into a mixing desk. And
why would that be a low impedance? What is the connection between low impedance input and a recording desk?
Well, so if you're going to plug an amp, a guitar by nature is a high impedance thing. So that means there's not any extra electronics in it other than pickup, cable into an amp, and then the amp is a high impedance thing too. So that means it's a very hot signal. This microphone, I don't know, is this a condenser mic?
It's a dynamic.
So, okay, so this is a dynamic mic. So this dynamic mic is a low impedance thing. It's the signal coming out of this needs to go into something else that's low impedance, and then it gets boosted and handled, which is what you do all the time in your world, mixing things. So this guitar is and there's not many guitars in the world that are intended to go right into a mixing. In fact, this might be the only one. I'm sure people can help and correct us if that's not right. But so because of most guitars, they're going to have that high impedance thing snorting right into an amp with the intent of that signal hitting the preamps and kind of being very aggressive. Then the preamps react to that, the power amps react to that, and then that's what makes the beautiful distortion thing that we're all looking for.
Kind of like a Beatles DI guitar sound, really fuzzy, really kind of gritty.
Yes. Yeah. And the idea of, distortion, harmonic distortion is such a weird concept. My dad was an opera singer and great singer, trained and everything. I mean, that wasn't what he did for a living. That's what my sister does for a living. But I remember telling my dad, yeah, Dad, I'm looking for that distortion. He's like, you're looking for what? What? And it's like, well, yeah, that's what we're all after. It's like, okay, that's the holy grail. And the Les Paul, normal Les Pauls will give you that. It comes close to it, but it's not the same. Even with the high impedance thing, because these pickups, they're humbuckers, but they're just not as hot as the PAFs that are on the other guitars.
And have you heard any other artists besides Les Paul play this edition? Have you seen it out in the wild on any records, or are you and Les Paul kind of the only two guys that you heard play this guitar?
I've never come across anybody else that has. I mean, obviously they're out there, but I've never come across anyone. I've never seen anybody on a video playing one. I mean, it's kind of it's a weird animal. And most rock guitar players, this is not what they're looking for. They're looking for the thing that's going to bring the grr. So this is not necessarily a grr guitar. Eli Thompson, who plays with Father John Misty, as long as I've known him, has played the bass model of this thing.
Okay. What's the difference between the bass model and the one that you have?
4 strings versus 6.
Oh, the bass, like bass guitar.
Yeah, bass guitar model of this, the Les Paul recording bass.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Okay. That's crazy that there's also a bass that pairs with that.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy.
Okay. So then, just so the listener knows, what other guitars do you have in your collection? And then when do you go to this one? If you're recording, like what draws you to this versus your other guitars?
There's a really intense dynamic, or there's a tonal quality to this guitar, the pickup, the circuitry, to all the stuff that's inherent in these electronics, which we'll talk about in a bit, I'm sure, that allows you to get sounds that you're never going to get on another guitar. Not even close. Not possible.
That's rad. Okay, so the features of the Les Paul recording is obviously there's an input jack, just one input jack, right? And then you have pickup selector, toggle switch to the front, both in rare.
Yep.
And then you have bass control.
Yep.
You have treble control.
Yeah, and those are masters.
And then you have high and low impedance switch.
Yep.
And then you have the decade control.
Yep.
And then you have phase switch.
Yeah.
Volume control, and then you have a two-nomatic bridge, low impedance pickups, truss rod cover, Schaller design machine heads. So let's talk about a little bit about the low impedance pickups. So according to the manual that you sent me, they say that this is the only guitar on the market with 2 humbucking low impedance pickups. These pickups offer a new concept in tonal response. The pickup height in relation to the strings has been carefully adjusted to produce maximum performance.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would agree with that. The way the pickups, the strings sit over the pickups has always been an interesting thing to me.
Okay.
I've always liked it.
Nice. So they say maintain the factory adjusted string setting for best results. Have you ever gotten it set up?
No, I have not. Isn't that funny?
Who does your setups when you do send something in?
I've had a number of different people, but there's a guy named Paul Stebner that I like to use in Orange County. He's great. And years ago, I used to, oh gosh, goodness sakes, I'm going to forget his name. I'll have to put it in the notes, but there's a guy, when I was living in the Valley, that I would take my guitar to all the time. Super good. This guitar just never, it was like, I'm not going to spend money on this guitar. So I do it.
Yeah.
I do the setups.
So then they say the frequency response, tonalities, and range of harmonics will exceed that of any electric guitar on the market to date.
That's what I would say if I was marketing the guitar too.
I usually try to take out the marketing speak, but in this case, because this is a 1970, what was it? 76,
74. I think the model actually started in 72.
Yeah.
I think.
So because
this is a 72.
Yeah, because this is kind of historical material, I kind of like hearing how they described it.
Yeah.
So then, now what does the impedance switch do? So
okay,
they say.
Here's an example. So here it is. This is guitar. Okay, I have a little bit of reverb on, but it's guitar into a dual amp setup, and but this is a high impedance setting into a model that's expecting high impedance.
And what brand of model are you using?
The Fractal FM9.
And then what amp is it emulating?
Oh goodness, I think it's the Texas Lone Star, and then the AC20, the Morgan AC20.
Okay.
So I think that's a Mesa Boogie Lone Star. So. Okay, so you can hear that's what it sounds like. High impedance into those things with a little bit of reverb. I'll leave the reverb on, but Okay, so now here's the low impedance.
Wow, it almost disappears.
Yeah. So you get the idea right away of like the dB difference between the output of these pickups and what that's intended to do going into a mixing desk.
20 to 40 dBs or something like that?
I don't know. You should measure it.
Yeah.
So that's that. I mean, if it's 20 dB, that's a lot, but...
Yeah, I'm looking, let's see. It looks like it's maybe around 10.
I mean, when you think about it, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But you hear, what's funny is you think, okay, all the tonal quality has gone away, but I bet if we plugged it into another thing, it would come back.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's expected to do.
That's right. So yeah, you guys will mostly be hearing it in high impedance mode. They describe the impedance switch here, saying that the guitar is equipped with a unique switch that enables you to use either high or low impedance amplifier without the use of a special transformer cable.
Yeah, that's right. No, so the original model of this guitar, there was one model before this, and I don't think it had the switch. So in order for you to use it in a high impedance thing, you actually had to have a transformer.
Wow.
So, which I think I think I had one for a microphone once that I tried just messing around and plugging it in and seeing if it worked, and it did.
So then they say, be sure that the impedance switch is in high position. In the event you are using a low impedance amplification system, your impedance switch must be in the low position.
Yeah, because if this was high impedance plugging into a mixing desk, it would just sound like distortion.
Yeah.
Like ugly distortion, not what we're looking for.
If using a high impedance amplifier and your impedance switch is in the low position, you will experience a considerable loss in output level, which we've just experienced.
We just experienced it. We experienced that.
Yeah. So let's see here. And then they say, so for the toggle switch, activate the front pickup the closest to the fingerboard. So go ahead and let's hear that one.
This one?
Yeah. So they call it the front pickup. By moving the toggle switch to the front position.
Normal neck stuff. So let's go down here. Bridge position pickup. Sounds like it. And then here's the blend. I think if I was going to pick up this guitar now and record with it, I would probably be more interested in the neck pickup and the blend of the two together.
Yeah, totally. That's a nice sound.
It is a nice sound. I think that's useful.
Mm-hmm. It's really nice. It almost has like a Telecaster kind of.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so now we're going to start. Maybe we should talk about this phase thing.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so when you're in this setting right here, so one of the things that's great about Stratocaster is it's got a 5-way switch, right? So a 5-way meaning one is here. Well, it's a 3 pickup guitar. So one is here, one's for the middle. So 1, 2, 3. So 3 is for the middle pickup. 5 is for this pickup. But in between is a blend of the at setting 2 is a blend of pickups 1 and 3, or bridge middle, and then vice versa. When you put number 4 on, that's blend of neck and middle, and they're out of phase. So here's what's interesting is that I don't think there's another Les Paul that does this. It's got that quack, that quack that you get from a Telecaster or a Strat.
That's nice.
Very useful.
Yeah.
And I used that a lot when I was playing this guitar live.
Yeah. That's rad. Okay, so then we have, let's talk about what on earth is a decade control switch.
Okay, so now I remember this, and so remember, I think we talked about it a second ago, but that when I bought the guitar, I didn't know what any of these electronics were. It was like, it says Les Paul on there, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
I have this. I was like, this money is burning a hole in my pocket. I'm buying a Les Paul, dang it. So I didn't know what this was. Now this pickup, this switch, I think is primarily designed for use in the low impedance setting into a mixing desk.
Okay.
Because the differences in sound are super, super subtle. Like, for instance, you've spent years and years and years as a mixer training your ears to hear those subtle differences. When you're in a club playing a guitar through a stack, subtlety is the last thing you're looking for. You know what I mean? So, but we can experiment with it. So I'm going to put it, we'll talk about this guy in a second, but I'll put it in the neck pickup. And then right now the decade switch is on, it was on 10, because it's a Les Paul, so everything should be on 10, right? All right, so okay, so I don't know that we'll hear the subtleties, but we'll try it. What do you think it's doing, Spencer?
To me, it sounds like a, is it the bypass on like a tape thing where it's kind of doing like a gainy crunch thing?
I feel like it feels to me like it's like a notchy kind of either like a bump or a cut. Maybe it'd be better if we did it on this pickup. Okay, that's at 10, so I'm going to go back to 0. By the way, this knob is super not easy to use.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to 5.
Wow.
Go back to 0. It just sounds like it's getting a little thinner. That's what it sounds like to me. It is super subtle.
Yeah.
So, but I think the idea is so Les Paul is he's a recording genius. He's attributed with being the guy that created the amplifier, right? Yeah. So, he was a guy that had Gibson build for him a unit that he stuck on his guitar, and he was looping his guitar in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what kind of circuitry was making that happen. So he's a genius guy. So subtlety was not lost on him. So, I think the idea would be, maybe turn the treble down. Let's see what happens moving these switches. I'm sure this is thrilling for the viewer. Maybe it is, actually.
It says it alters the treble harmonics is the official description. Position 0 will peak the highest frequency and graduates accordingly down the spectrum in steps through position 10. I kind of feel like that's what it was doing. Yeah.
They're telling us that's what it's doing. But and I read in preparation for this, because I literally did not know this until I read in preparation for our talk today, that decade is a measurement of, it's an electronic measurement, whereas if you're moving something in physical space, it's millimeters, right? Centimeters. Decade is a term of when you're changing electronics and signal flow. That's a measurement of that. So this is the decade switch.
Yeah, to me it reminds me of that little knob on the tape machine. I'm pretty sure, is it called bypass, or what is it called? The little thing that you twist and you get that like gainier, fizzier, something with the
bias thing?
Yeah, the bias. There you go. That's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah, which by the way, once again, very subtle.
Yeah. It's like, it's produced different frequency results, different harmonics, different ways that it interacts with the kind of gain and saturation and all that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you said there was another notch you wanted to mention before we wrap up.
Yeah, this last knob, which is kind of cool, because then this is really one of the things that is confusing about the guitar, but also very cool. And I beside, like, if all this other stuff didn't set it apart, this definitely does. So this idea, it's got a tone control, right? Isn't that what they call it? It says tone on there. It's a tone control. These are volume. These are tone controls too. Don't get confused. I'm confused, and I own the guitar. So at setting 2, not 1. Why you guys thought this, I don't know, but there you go. At setting 2, everything on the guitar is working. Everything. Okay? And you'll correct me because I think you have the notes if I'm wrong. But then if you set it to setting 1, what happens then? Can you read it and tell me?
Let's see. On the phase, it says 2 position slide, in phase and out phase. Normal tone is produced by moving the phase switch to the in phase position.
Yeah.
Both pickups will produce the same type signal, and exciting now sound can be achieved by moving the switch to out phase. The 2 pickups will then produce opposing signals. When you desire an out phase tonality, the pickup selector switch must be in the center position. Both pickups must be working simultaneously in order to achieve this effect.
Right. So now go to the next thing it should be talking about is the tone switch.
Oh, the tone selector. My bad. Yeah. So position 1 engages both pickups into the tonal circuit. The signal output of both those pickups are mixed together, bypassing the treble and bass controls. The pickup selector's toggle switch need to be in the center position to activate both pickups. If the toggle switch is placed in the center position, additionally, tonal effects may be achieved. Position 2, all controls are entered into the circuit, providing you with a complete choice of tonalities. This position bypasses the treble and bass controls, leaving only the volume, decade control, phase, and pickup selector toggle switch in the circuit. In this position, the toggle switch must be used to select both pickups.
Okay, so by the way, there's a test.
Yeah.
Those of you watching this, you'll be required. There's a test. YouTube will be checking on you. Okay, so let's check it. Let's experiment. Okay, so I'm going to turn the volume control knobs all the way off. And in setting 2, right? I mean, not volume. I turned the tone controls off. Bass and treble are at 0.
Wow.
Okay, so here's what's cool about that. If you decide, I mean, because nobody wants to have that stuff turned all the way off, but what about some subtle differences? Okay? We're using the word subtle a lot today. I'm sponsored by Subtle. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
So, I mean, I just got a bunch of tone changes and didn't touch a single knob except for this guy.
All right, so that is the tone selector switch. So do you feel like there's anything else regarding the phase, the tone, the bass and treble controls that you want to mention? Decade control switch, master volume.
I think that the one thing that I want to talk about, and I mentioned it a little bit, is the out of phase switch. Oh yeah, I've got to have it. Okay, there we go. I mean, that's pretty cool. It's just I describe, because I have a Telecaster and I have a Strat. They don't sound like this. It's that idea. This is the only word I can come up with for it. It's reedier. It's kind of reedy. It sounds like, it's got almost like a clarinety kind of. Anyway.
Totally, like kind of the jazzier, kind of smoother, rounder.
Well, I don't know. That's a very specific thing that you'd have to be looking for, but it's cool that you have it in your arsenal.
Totally. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that is the Gibson Les Paul Recording. Thank you, Hanz, for bringing this beautiful guitar. And we will see you guys next time. Later.